What's up, Wolfpack Nation? Special Friday episode for you all. We have a very special guest, recurring guest, Noah Teague of The Technician. We also have Fan Friday. Stick around. It's going to be a great show.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Wolfpack, free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. New customers can bet $5 and get up to $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Happy Friday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs, and now recurring guest of Locked On Wolfpack, assistant sports editor of The Technician, Noah Teague. Noah, thank you for hanging out with us.
Absolutely. Happy to be with you guys.
Now, we bumped into Noah up in the press box at Duke, so what better time to bring him back on the show to discuss what went down in Durham, unfortunately. But Noah, as a writer for The Technician, you're kind of our liaison to the pulse of campus. So what's the vibes on campus now with NC State sitting at 4-3 going into the bye week?
The vibes are not good. And it's been like this for a while. Obviously, towards the end of Armstrong's time under center, things were getting tough. Fans were booing him. And so then when you moved over to Morris, there was a bit of a spark there, but that Duke game, it sucked the life out of the student body. And man, I hate to say it, but they're starting to sound a little bit like Carolina fans asking for basketball season. But there's still a little bit of hope, a few optimists out there. And there are some winnable games still on the schedule, like Wake Forest. So
yeah, we felt a little hesitant to run a basketball episode this week because of that idea. We're not moving on to basketball. This was a pre-planned episode to have basketball this week. And we will even talk about some basketball today. But yeah, not exactly how we wanted to go into the bye week, getting a lopsided loss at the hands of Duke. So Noah, in your opinion here, what's the biggest thing that NC State needs to focus on coming out of this bye week and hosting Clemson next weekend?
Yeah, it's tough when you're going to try to hit the ground running against still one of the best teams in the ACC. I know Clemson has fallen off this season, but the talent they have, especially defensively, is going to make it very tough to get in an offensive rhythm. I think the biggest thing that you want to do in this game and moving forward for the rest of the season is figure out who you got on your roster that can help you for 2024 and beyond. And so I think that means figuring out, what do you have in Morris? Is he really the guy moving forward? What do you have in guys like Michael Allen, Kendrick Raphael, receivers like Terrell Timmons, Juice Vereen, who has just completely disappeared after the Notre Dame game, which, look, I'm not a coach, but I think that's a guy that I'd like to have out there with his explosive play potential. So I think that's the biggest thing, figuring out what you have in these young guys, seeing if they're going to be good enough to be starters for you next year, or if you need to go into the portal to address those positions.
I want to quote Meek Mill for a second here. MJ Morris had to be like Meek Mill in the song Gave Him Hope, because the song starts off, when they needed motivation, I gave them hope. And it feels like MJ is kind of in that position where he has to be the spark plug. He has to be the stir of the drink, the leader offensively. And so far, have you seen the capabilities from him that you could say for the rest of this season and going forward, you can see him as a leader?
I think it's too early to make an official judgment on him. I think you still want to see what he looks like against a Clemson defense, what he looks like going on the road against teams like Virginia Tech and Wake Forest. But I do think from this very small sample size we've seen that there is potential there. He's got some of those flash plays where you watch him and you're like, wow, this guy could be a star. You look at some of his dimes he threw to Trent Penix in the Marshall game. Those flashed. You look at last season against Wake Forest. He found Keon Lassane for an incredible pass down the field. And so he's had these moments of passing down the field, making these explosive plays that give you some hope. But like any young player, he's had to take his lumps. He's thrown, I believe it's 4 interceptions already through 2 games. Some of those on him, some of those on his surrounding cast. But I think that there's definitely the potential for that.
Now, talking about his surrounding cast, earlier this week, we gave out our midterm report card grades. We're going to have you do some of the same. We're going to lump it into offense, defense, and overall. So you're actually just taking midterms. I understand you took a couple today on Friday. That was actually completely ironic that we called ours midterm grades. But for the offense through the first 7 games here, what grade would you give them at the bye week?
This is one of those grades that where you don't want your mom seeing this grade. You don't want your grandpa seeing this grade because it's not looking pretty on the report card for this offense, man. I'll start with the positives. Casey Conception has been absolutely incredible for this team. He has been an absolute, really huge piece of this offense, and without him, the offense can't really get the field going. You've seen flashes from guys. We've seen Michael Allen, who, when they give him the ball, he's made things happen. Gets usually 4 or 5 yards per carry. MJ Morris, like we talked about, has had a few of those splash plays. But overall, man, this offense has been a rough watch, especially in conference play. I'm giving it a D, and it's because of when you look at what they've put around MJ Morris, aside from Conception, aside from Allen, it has just been bad, just to be honest. You look at a lot of their receivers, they're either struggling with drops, they're struggling with getting separation. You look at the offensive line, man, the false starts in that Duke game were a really very telling moment.
But the crowd was so ruckus, Noah. It was so ruckus in there. You could barely hear yourself think in Wallace Wade. That's
the Wolfpack fans there were ruckus. I'll give you that. But when you have pretty much a neutral field at Duke, that should not be 4 false starts. And that was all in the first half. I mean, absolutely terrible discipline right there. So I think overall, you got to give this offense a D. Nobody's really helping Morris out except for Conception.
We agree. I think we both had very similar grades ourselves. Defense now, what have you seen there?
Yeah, the defense has been much better. I think that, they're not the same defense that they were last year, but that was a historic defense. You can't really expect that. But Tony Gibson has done a nice job piecing together things, bringing in a lot of talent, developing guys. And so I'd give it a B+ because there's been a lot of really good moments, but there have been a few of those slips back down to earth that just have cost this team at times. But I mean, with this defense, you have to start with Peyton Wilson. He has been an absolute star for this team. Everyone knows what he's done. You look at the defensive line, they've done a really good job of getting pressure. I've been very impressed with Red Hibbler, the JUCO transfer. And then you look in the secondary, devastated with injuries at the safety position. And I know they've given up some big plays, but for what you've been working with back there, I've been impressed with the way that they've been able to hold down the fort. You look at that Duke game, and I know they were without Riley Leonard, but you essentially held them to 17 points because, one of those touchdowns was off of an MJ Morris pick in your own red zone. I think that's more on the offense than the defense. And so overall, this defense has looked pretty impressive. There has been some trouble stopping the run. We saw that in the Duke game. They had some big runs. You saw in the Notre Dame game, their 80-yard run after the giant thunderstorm. So there's been some issues, a little bit of overshooting gaps, that kind of deal. But overall, it's been a good unit. Give them a B+.
Okay. And now overall, the entirety of the 7 games so far, half of the season, give us your overall grade.
It's, you look at these games, and y'all have talked about this before, but what game has really stood out as impressive? You look at your wins. Yeah. UConn wasn't very impressive. VMI, that's a bad Division II or FCS school. You barely squeaked by Virginia, and then you got a 7-point win against Marshall. It's been rough, and your losses have looked bad. You got blown out and totally dominated by Duke. You hung with Notre Dame for 3 quarters, but they eventually flexed their muscles on you. And then you put up 10 points at home against Louisville. It's been pretty bad. And so despite everything the defense has done, I think you have to give this probably a D+, C- type of grade because this has been just falling flat on their face. And it was always going to be a rebuilding year, but the way it has happened has been very tough.
Hoping to turn something around in these last 5 games here, but the gauntlet of the schedule that lies ahead is no easy task at hand, to say the absolute least. Up next, we're going to transition over to basketball. We're going to see what Noah thinks about the upcoming season for Kevin Keats and the crew after a quick word from our sponsors. This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give Betterhelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? You feel like you should know what to do, what's good for you, but you just can't get there. Therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. So check out betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedoncollege. Our second sponsor of the day is FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed when placing just a $5 bet. That's right, $5 can get you up to $200 back in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So if you're thinking about laying it all on the line with this college football Saturday without the stress of an NC State football game, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. All right, we are back now with Noah Teague, assistant sports editor of The Technician. We're now going to move indoors over to PNC to talk about the upcoming basketball season for Kevin Keats and the Wolfpack. A lot of building excitement, a lot of excitement around the depth of this team, not something we've had in quite some time. Noah, I want to start here with your initial thoughts. What's your take on this basketball season right around the corner here?
Well, I'll start with this. It's a whole lot more optimistic than football. And you look at this basketball team, man, I am excited about it. This is one of the top half teams in the ACC. It's going to be tough to judge exactly where right now just because of all the new faces. But you look at all the additions they made. I think Kevin Keats hit another home run in the portal this offseason. And, you know, bringing back guys like DJ Burns and Casey Morsell, that's only going to help strengthen this team and improve them even more by having that continuity. So overall, I'm very excited for this team. I think that it's one of the better teams in the ACC and will be an NCAA tournament team.
Now, interesting you bring up NC State being in the top half. According to On3, their early season power rankings, not exactly a finalized preseason ranking, but the power ranking is at 6th. Do you think this is too low, too high, or just about right for the expectations of this team?
Yeah, you know, I think this is about right. And there's potential to go up from here if all your transfers hit. But, you know, in the era of the portal, it's tough to bank on all of those guys hitting, but you got a lot of shots at it. So I do think it'll work out. But I think 6 is pretty fair. You look at the teams ahead of them. Obviously, Duke and Carolina are always going to have talent. We'll see if they capitalize on it. Virginia, always a tough defense. They're going to be really good. Clemson, I don't know if they're going to win more than State, but we saw last year that matchup. Clemson is almost built to beat NC State. So I will give the edge to Clemson there. And then Miami, fresh off a trip to the Final Four, man. So I think 6 is pretty fair, but there is potential for this team to move up, especially, you know, we'll see what happens with Clemson. Did they stay consistent? Does a team like UNC actually live up to their expectations this year? But overall, 6 is pretty fair.
In terms of where you see this team, because we talk like, you know, 6 is where you would expect them to be, but in terms of ceiling and floor, talk to me.
So I would say, you know, could definitely finish ahead of Clemson because that's a team where, I mean, under Brad Brownell, that's been very inconsistent. So we'll see if they can do it 2 years in a row. We'll see with Miami. They're another portal-heavy team, so that could go up and down. And then you look at Virginia. It's not quite the same as they've been in years past. You look at UNC. They haven't really lived up to the hype under Hubert Davis. And so, you know, I think this team, if they hit their ceiling, could be a top 4 team in the ACC, get that double bye in the ACC tournament, and be a solid lock for the NCAA tournament by the time they finish up their regular season. And then you look at the floor, and it's kind of tricky because a lot of these teams behind them are a little muddy where it's like, I don't know, maybe things work out for them. I'm not particularly high on a lot of these teams, but you look at Pitt, they had a really good year last year. Wake Forest under Steve Forbes is always just a tough team to beat. Florida State, I mean, last year was a mess, but Leonard Hamilton is one of the best coaches in the ACC still. So there's definitely potential for NC State to fall there. The path for that would have to be if you have guys like DJ Horn, Jaden Taylor, Michael O'Connell. They don't just not fill the shoes of guys like Baby T and Jarkel, but they significantly underperform. You'd probably be looking at some bad injuries, which, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But I think overall, this is one of the safer teams in the ACC.
So I find it funny that you said, if they don't fill those shoes, because those are some tremendous shoes to fill. Now, I'm talking Shaq size, 18 Latrell Sprewells, the little ones that you pump up and the spinner on the back starts moving. But with that being said, I completely understand where you're coming from there.
Now, getting into some of these players, Noah, give us a top newcomer and a top returner that you're excited to see on the court this year.
Well, I'll start with the obvious one for top returner. It's got to be DJ Burns, man. He was so special last year. And when NC State had their basketball media day, was able to talk to DJ real briefly. He slimmed down a little bit. He was looking pretty good. So I think DJ is in for an even bigger season. He's not going to have guys like T that are absolute bucket getters necessarily around him. So they're going to have to lean on him a little bit more. But I think that the depth of this team is built really well. They'll have guys that can space the floor, but then that means they can also kick it into DJ. So I'm expecting him to have an even better season than last year. We'll see if he can work a little bit on the defensive end, control some of those fouls, all of that. As far as newcomers to watch, I am super excited to see Mohamed Diarra. He's a bigger wing type prospect. He actually came from the JUCO ranks before he was at Missouri. He was the number one JUCO prospect in the country. And just looking at his numbers through there, he was a double-double machine, always getting his points, getting his rebounds. He was a great shot blocker. He ended up actually leading the JUCO ranks in rebounds nationally. He was also something that you don't always see in big men, a really good free throw shooter, and he led his conference in total free throws made. You look at last year, he saw minimal action early with Missouri, which, talented team to be expected when you're moving up a level. But towards the end, he did start to come on. He led the team in rebounds during 5 different games towards the end of the season. So I am very excited to see him, especially as a defensive force, because that is something that is pretty rare in the modern game to see a lockdown defender. I feel like a lot of guys, offensive first. Mohamed Diarra is going to be a force on the defensive end, and don't discount him on offense either. He's going to be a solid player there. So definitely watch for him.
I've heard that his passing out of the post was something that was high level and something to look out for as well. Have you been hearing similar rumblings coming out of NC State's basketball camp?
I have. And, that's something that if it translates into the ACC, that's going to be huge because, like I hinted at earlier, there's a lot of guys that can shoot on this team. So you can just kind of picture Diarra kind of moving in towards the paint, kicks it right out to a wide open Casey Morsell after they crash in on him to try to help. And so I think that passing ability is going to be really big. And, talk about DJ Burns, he's got that passing ability as well. And so if you have 5 guys on the court, because your guards, they can all pass decently well. If you have 5 guys that can share the rock, that's going to be huge for your team.
Yeah, I believe when Diarra committed and I kind of watched some tape and read up on him a little bit, I got a lot of comparison to DJ Funderburk almost in a sense, but I feel like Diarra's ceiling is even higher than Funderburk's was. I think Diarra can be a little bit more refined. At the moment, he's probably a bit more raw, but the end result could be something very special here in Raleigh. So again, Kevin Keats was cooking in the transfer portal. A lot of new faces here to get ready for this basketball season. Now, 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away? Can't believe it snuck up on us this quickly. We're going to finish out this Friday episode with some fan comments. We're going to have Noah join us on Fan Friday after a quick word from our sponsors. Our third sponsor of the day is Birddogs. Point blank period, Birddogs make you look good. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddog shorts do the exact same thing as a Lululemon, but the fit is simply way more comfortable. They use anti-stick sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. They also dabble in the jogger pant game. Weather's getting cooler, basketball season is quickly approaching. Get you in some Bird Dog joggers as well. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off, we promise you. All right, rounding out this Friday episode, diving right into Fan Friday. Still have Noah Teague of The Technician joining us. We're going to tackle some of our fan questions / comments this week, and you will get on to your weekend. First one here from Dennis Holshoe. This is in context of the football team. He says, the team is a reflection of the head coach. How does the coaching staff deal with the body language of one of you mentioned with MJ? How does the coach instill the belief that we can win? I don't believe this team believes in themselves. Noah, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously every season is going to fall on the shoulders of the head coach because he is the head man. But I don't think this season is necessarily a reflection of Dave Doran. I think he's a better coach than, what we're seeing. And, we're coming off of 3 straight seasons where he had 8+ wins. So I think a lot of people are quick to jump off of the Dave Doran bandwagon, if you will. So, overall, yes, the responsibility does fall on him. But I think that, every program, unless you're the Alabamas, the Georgias of the world, is going to go through dips like this season. It's disappointing how this one has happened, but it's part of the cycle, and you can best believe that Dave Doran will have this team cycling back up in the near future.
So I'll say this. I was the one who mentioned the body language, MJ Morris and all that, and I'll say this. We're getting him in the right direction. Remember last year, there was a quote from him that said, we're not going to win every game. That's not realistic. This year, the quote from him is Vince Lombardi, winning isn't everything. It's the only thing. I'd rather win, when he was said to be one of the highest graded players. They're building him up through the process of becoming a winner. Because I said this earlier on Adam Gold's show, and I'll say it again here. A lot of people expect oxtail results. A lot of people expect Thanksgiving feast results in hot dog time. That doesn't make sense. We're going through the process with MJ. This is why I said at the beginning of the season, if Brennan is not going to be a guy who can put us in the situation to win now, give me MJ, because I want him to make the mistakes. I want him to learn. I want him to take the bumps, the bruises, so that when we are where we need to be, he's fully ready to be the guy. And a moment like Duke is necessary to the process. It's necessary to that process of becoming a young man, becoming a quarterback, becoming the leader that we want him to be, so that 2 years from now, when we've got some new star receiver or tight end on campus, and all of a sudden he's having a terrible game, and he doesn't get a pass interference call, MJ goes to him, pick your head up. Don't talk to the ref. Don't talk to the Zebras. They ain't never going to give us a call. We got to beat it anyway.
Yeah, no, I think, you hit the nail on the head there. Failure is the best teacher. So going through a season like this, while it sucks, I think that MJ will be better for it, along with the rest of the guys.
Next one comes from, I believe this is Karshi Alley with some numbers on the end of it. Explosive plays happen when you run a gimmick defense. Why not go conventional with a 4-3 defense or a 3-4? I believe what I responded to this comment was, on some levels, I do understand this, because at times you feel like a 3-3-5 can put you at a disadvantage depending on what your opponent throws at you. However, we just saw last year that the 3-3-5 can work extremely well. However, also, we had some different horses in the stable than we currently have now. But I have nearly all the faith in the world in Tony Gibson here. And I wouldn't say that the few explosive plays that have happened is super indicative of this defense as a whole. I think it's just been a very unfortunate sequence of multiple breakdowns that have costed us big time and resulting in a couple points.
I just started Ted Lasso, and I'm gonna use a quote here from Ted Lasso. He said, you want to know what the happiest animal in the world is? A goldfish. They got 10 seconds of memory. That's all they got. And I feel like NC State fans and faithful and media at times can be a negative goldfish. Like, we only remember the negatives and we forget the positives every 10 seconds. The 3-3-5 has nothing to do with why we're allowing these runs. Like, that's objectively not the point here. because when we had Isaiah Moore, Drake Thomas, Peyton Wilson, teams weren't gashing us for multiple runs of 70+ yards. Like we've seen multiple years of the 3-3-5. I believe this is the first year that we've had 83 different games with 70-yard plus runs against us, right? So this isn't something that is a inherent feature of the 3-3-5. It's more so a situation where, again, we don't have the horse in the stable, but I will say this, we do need to adjust to that unbalanced line. We do. Only one of the long runs this season has come in a normal formation. Only one, a singular one. So to me, I think this is much more a feature of us not being able to, again, say, hey, it's an unbalanced line, everybody, kick one over, than it is a feature of the 3-3-5 being.
You know, I'm with you guys. If there's anyone in the country that knows what they're doing on defense, it's Tony Gibson. We've seen this unit work for years. And, you know, you talk about explosive plays. There's still a lot less explosive plays compared to other teams around the country. I mean, look just down the road at UNC last season. Look down this season at South Carolina. There are teams all around the country in our backyard that are giving up a lot more explosive plays. And so I think this is, you know, are seeing these explosive plays. They almost stand out more because of what we saw last year with such an elite defense, one of the best in the country last season. Yeah. And so now that we're falling back towards just being a good defense, you know, these things pop up more. And it's definitely something, like you mentioned, Kenton, you have to adjust to. But I think that we're in a great position too.
This next one here is in the context of basketball. Harrison 244 says, time to drink more state Kool-Aid. I'm ready. In all seriousness, though, I hope the ACC as a whole improves. It would suck to win 20-plus games again and be an 11 seed. Now, this will be an interesting point to watch because I do believe the ACC as a whole will be a much more competitive league this year. I think a lot of teams got better, and that will bring up the floor. You know, what we saw last year is, yes, State did win enough games to be clearly in, but the health, I guess not exactly the health, but the standing of the ACC conference as a whole, I believe that ultimately played into trending toward the bubble when it came time to selection mode. But NC State, regardless, if NC State focuses on NC State and they don't beat NC State, the resume will take care of itself.
I 1,000% agree. We have the depth. We have the talent. We have everything that we need, that if we make it hard on teams, if we don't turn away or turn over the ball, if we don't have DJ Burns posting up at the three-point line and walking guys down, which, I mean, it's cool to watch and all, but it's just not effective, efficient basketball. If we don't have things like that and a lot of shot chucking and a lot of settling for jump shots, I think we'll be just fine. If we don't have a lot of guys blowing by us in the half court, we'll be just fine, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you talked about the last season, how the ACC was down a little bit. I don't think you need to worry about the resume this season. The non-conference is going to be a little bit better with Tennessee, who's always one of the better teams in the country. You got Ole Miss with Chris Beard, who, say what you will about him off the court, incredible basketball coach on the court. And then, you know, looking at the ACC itself, Carolina should be much better. Duke should be improved. Virginia is always good. Miami is going to be good. And so you look at this schedule, there's going to be opportunities. So if you go in, you take care of business against the teams you're supposed to beat, and you win your share of toss-up games, you're going to be in the ACC tournament. You're going to win some games there, and you're going to be in the NCAA tournament. Probably is higher than an 11 seed.
Last one here to round out our Friday show. This comes from Jason, NCSU 2007. He had an epiphany about why NC State is so rabid about supporting every sport. It's because we're constantly looking for hope and optimism when in the middle of a sinking ship season. We love basketball because it takes our mind off of failing at football. We love baseball because it takes our mind off of failing at basketball. We love football because it takes our mind off of failing at baseball. And so it goes. You know, it's tough here because he's not wrong. He didn't have
but
to
you didn't have to
it.
say it. Exactly. You didn't have to say it.
Sometimes being an NC State fan does feel like this here cycle. And we're still looking forward to getting out of this cycle. I know Dave Doran a couple of years back announced that the curse is over. I think that was a little premature.
Extremely.
Kevin Keats has denounced NC State stuff. We'll see how that goes for him this year. But, you know, we'll talk about baseball at a later date. I think they'll be very good this year. We were on a solid incline, NC State sports was, I'd say probably a year and a half ago. And it seems like we've now lost all that momentum. Basketball has a real chance to get us back on the train tracks here with a solid season.
I'm going to say this, and I really want NC State fans to truly hear me on this, okay? Because I know sometimes people think I get too animated and I sound like a wrestler cutting a promo, so I'm going to be as even keel as I can here. NC State fans, and I know Jason said this tongue-in-cheek, but I know this is like a joke from him, but I want to be very serious in this moment. NC State fans are rabid about every sport because they're NC State fans. We are maniacal people. We are obsessed with our teams. We are the people that are diehard. We don't ride for national championships and conference titles only. We'll ride with you if you win 3 games in conference. We'll ride with you to the end of the world if you're losing midweek series against Davidson. We'll ride with you to the end of the world if we're barely beating Richmond. I was a part of a team that barely beat Richmond, and I saw the Walk of Champions. NC State fans are who they are because of who they are. There's an inherent thing that when you put on that red and white, see, I got to calm down because now I'm getting geeked up again. When you put on that red and white and you decide that this is the fandom for you, this is the school you want to play at, this is the school you want to be an alum of, there's something to it that says we don't give a damn about nothing. This is our team. We're going to stick beside them. We're going to show up for them like we talked about. And this is the honest God truth. And to let the Duke fans come after me, they already have. Come on back. Come on back for seconds because JJ Jackson of Locked On Blue Devils was having a host of another show on who was begging and pleading for Duke fans to show up for football. And they've got a top 20 team. That's unheard of at State. If we have a team that's even sniffing relevancy, those stands will be packed. That's just who we are. So, I get that this is a joke, but make no mistake, Wolfpack Nation is amazing because of the essence of who they are.
Hey, it's like Philip Rivers said, Wolfpack ain't for soft people, and that is 100% true in every sport. But what you get from that is a fan base of very dedicated people, not just in football, like, how you might have at Alabama, not just in basketball, how you might have at Duke. You have it in all sports. You're seeing it in places like baseball. You see it in non-revenue sports like wrestling. Reynolds is packed out for that. And so just one of the incredible things about NC State is the fan support across all the sports. And just the way that through the thick and thin, they will be there. The fans will show up. We saw it in Durham. I mean, terrible performance, but one team or one group of people that showed up was the fans.
It sounds a little bit like Stockholm Syndrome, but I truly wouldn't have it any other way. I would certainly like to win something here, but I tell you what, all these years of this repeated cycle that Jason mentioned, when we win one, it's going to make it that much sweeter. I can promise you that. But Noah, thank you so much. Noah Teague of the Technician joining us here on Friday. We appreciate you jumping on. Recurring guest, many more appearances to come, I'm sure. That will do it for us here on Friday. As always, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Get your comments in the box so you can be featured on next Friday's Fan Friday. We got a weekend off of football, so a stress-free weekend. Feel free to enjoy that. And then we got a lot more to talk about with NC State taking on Clemson the end of next week. A lot more breakdowns to come there. We will see you all on Monday. Until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.
Pack.